She stood in a hangar surrounded by twisted metal, the plane her father piloted when it fell. No one wanted this job. So she lied. Inside the black box, his voice was still waiting. What would you do if the truth everyone believed was wrong? The hangar smells like failure and rain. Nora stands in the center of it, surrounded by twisted aluminum that used to be Flight 447. The plane her father was piloting 3 years ago when it fell from the sky and took 37 people with it. The wreckage is arranged in careful rows across the concrete floor, each piece tagged and numbered like evidence at a crime scene, which she supposes it was, for a while. She runs her fingers over the scorched fuselage, feeling the texture of disaster beneath her fingertips. Metal that once cut through clouds now lies cold and still, covered in rust and old rain. There are scorch marks along the seams where fire chewed through the cabin. She can still smell it. Faint, chemical, lingering. Aviation fuel and burnt paint. The ghost of heat. No one wanted this job. The restoration contract sat unclaimed for 8 months. The airline posted it twice, once in the spring and again in summer, but no restoration company would touch it. Too political, too painful, too many lawsuits still pending. So when Nora submitted her bid in late September under the name Halcyon Aircraft Services, a company that didn't exist until she registered it online for $90, no one questioned it. They just needed someone willing to catalog the wreckage, document what could be salvaged, and dispose of the rest according to federal guidelines. They didn't ask her last name. She didn't offer it. Her father's airline rejected her application twice before that. Once under her real name, once under her mother's maiden name. They recognized her both times, told her it was a conflict of interest, told her she was too close to it, told her, in carefully legal language, that they didn't want her anywhere near the investigation, the wreckage, or the narrative they'd already built around what happened. So she lied. She walks past the tail section, past the landing gear, still caked in mud from the field where they found it, past the mangled seats and oxygen masks, tangled like vines. Everything here is broken. Everything here is evidence of something gone wrong, except it wasn't wrong, not the way they said it was. Across the hangar, locked inside a steel evidence cabinet with a rusted padlock, sits the black box. Orange casing, scuffed and dented, untouched since the investigation closed 14 months ago. The NTSB opened it, extracted the data, analyzed the cockpit voice recording, and concluded what everyone wanted to hear. Pilot error, spatial disorientation, poor judgment in adverse weather, failure to follow protocol. Her father's fault. Her mother believed it. Her older brother believed it. The airline's legal team, the investigators, the media. They all believed it because it was easier than admitting that maybe the plane itself had failed, that maybe the maintenance logs were falsified, that maybe someone cut corners to save money and 37 people. Paid for it at 30,000 feet. But Nora doesn't believe it. She's not here to restore a plane. She's here to restore a name. The air in the hangar is cold and damp, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and doesn't leave. Outside, the sky is the color of old concrete, heavy with clouds that haven't broken in days. It's late November now, 3 years and 2 months since the crash. The season when everything dies back and waits. She crouches beside the cockpit section, where the control panel is a shattered web of wires and broken glass. The pilot's seat is still intact, the leather cracked and stained dark with something she doesn't want to think about. She closes her eyes and breathes through her nose. Slow, steady, the way he taught her when she was 11 and afraid of takeoff. Fear's just information, he'd said, his hand warm on her shoulder as the engines roared to life. It tells you something's unknown. Doesn't mean it's dangerous. She opens her eyes. There's a logbook wedged under the seat frame, water damaged and swollen, pages stuck together. She pulls it free carefully, like something fragile, like something holy. The cover is embossed with his initials, J.T., James Tanner, her father, Captain. 23 years of commercial flight with no incidents, no violations, no reprimands. She doesn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she stands and looks across the hangar at the evidence cabinet. The black box has been sealed for over a year. But the airline still owns the wreckage, which means she has access. Which means she can open it. Which means she can hear his voice again. Not the way she remembers it, warm and patient and teaching her how to read an altimeter, but the way it sounded in his final moments when the plane was falling and the alarms were screaming and he was trying to save everyone on board. She crosses the hangar slowly, her boots echoing on the concrete, her breath visible in the cold air. The padlock is old, brittle. It breaks under her bolt cutters with a single snap. She pulls the cabinet door open. The black box sits on the top shelf, smaller than she expected, orange and battered, and still cold to the touch. She lifts it out carefully, feeling its weight in her hands. This is the last thing that hurt him, the last thing that knew the truth. She carries it back to the cockpit wreckage and sits down on the cold floor, the black box cradled in her lap. Her hands don't shake, not yet. Nora was 11 when her father taught her how to read an altimeter. They were in his Cessna 172, the small four-seater he kept at a regional airstrip outside Portland. And she was sitting in the co-pilot seat with her hands folded in her lap because she was afraid to touch anything. The instrument panel looked like a language she didn't speak. Dials and needles and glowing numbers that meant nothing to her yet. This one, he said, tapping the altimeter with his knuckle, tells you how high you are, but it doesn't tell you how it feels. She looked at him, confused. He smiled. Close your eyes. She did. Now tell me what you feel. She felt the hum of the engine through the seat, the slight vibration in her chest, the way her stomach seemed to lift and settle as the plane climbed. Like I'm floating, she said. That's ascent, he told her. Trust that feeling. Trust your body. But when things go wrong, trust the instruments more. She opened her eyes and looked at the altimeter again. The needle was rising steadily. 2,000 feet. 2,500. 3,000. Instinct will lie to you in the clouds, he said. Your ears will tell you you're climbing when you're falling. Your body will tell you you're turning when you're flying straight. That's why we have these. He tapped the panel again. They don't lie. She remembers that day better than most of her childhood. The way his hands moved across the controls, easy and certain. The way his voice stayed calm even when the turbulence hit and the wings shuddered. The way he landed the plane so smoothly she didn't realize they were on the ground until the wheels stopped rolling. He was a commercial pilot for 23 years. No incidents. No violations. No reprimands. He flew 737s for Cascade Air, domestic routes mostly, Portland to Seattle, Portland to San Francisco, Portland to Denver. He knew those routes the way some people know their own driveways. He could tell you the weather patterns over the Cascades in February, the crosswinds at SFO in summer, the way the air thinned over the Rockies and made the engines work harder. Then one storm, one descent, one final radio call that said, "We're going down." Flight 447, November the 14th. 37 passengers, 4 crew members, no survivors. The official report blamed him. Spatial disorientation, poor judgment in adverse weather conditions, failure to execute proper emergency protocols. The language was careful, clinical, designed to sound factual rather than accusatory. But the conclusion was clear. Pilot error. Her mother believed it. Helen, who'd been married to him for 26 years, who knew his routines and his careful nature, who used to joke that he checked the smoke detectors in the house more often than most people check their mail. She read the report and accepted it. He made a mistake, she said quietly, standing in the kitchen 3 months after the funeral. It happens, even to good pilots. Her brother believed it too. Owen, 2 years older, studying aerospace engineering at UC Davis, who should have known better. He read the same report and nodded. The data supports it, he said. The black box doesn't lie. The airline believed it. The investigators believed it. The media believed it. The families of the other 37 people on that plane believed it. Because they needed someone to blame, and her father was already dead, so blaming him was easy. But Nora doesn't believe it. She remembers the last time she saw him, 2 days before the crash. It was late afternoon, and she'd just gotten home from work. She was 23 then, managing a small aircraft parts supplier in Hillsborough. He was in the garage, crouched beside a workbench, truing a propeller blade for the Cessna. The blade was mounted in a vise, and he was running a file along the edge with slow, precise strokes, pausing every few seconds to test the balance. She stood in the doorway and watched him work. "How do you know when it's right?" she asked. He didn't look up. "You feel it," he said. "The weight, the way it wants to spin. You can measure it with tools, but in the end, you have to trust what you know." He set the file down and spun the blade gently with his hand. It rotated smoothly, evenly, making a soft whoosh sound as it cut the air. "If something ever feels wrong up there," he said, finally looking at her, "trust what you know, not what they tell you." She didn't understand what he meant at the time. She thought he was talking about flying, about instinct versus instruments. But now, sitting on the cold hangar floor with the black box in her lap, she wonders if he was trying to tell her something else. The hangar is silent except for the faint drip of water somewhere in the rafters. Outside, the rain has started again, a soft, steady rhythm against the metal roof. She can smell aviation fuel and wet steel, rust and old oil, the scent of machinery left too long in the cold. She opens the logbook first. The pages are swollen and stuck together, but she peels them apart carefully, one at a time. His handwriting is neat, methodical, each entry dated and signed. Pre-flight checklists, fuel calculations, weather notes, the routine documentation of a pilot who did everything by the book. The final entry is dated November 14th, the morning of the crash. Pre-flight complete. All systems green. Weather advisory noted. Moderate turbulence expected over Cascades. Ceiling at 8,000 ftals. Helen's birthday the next week. Picked up her gift yesterday. That's it. No alarm. No concern. No indication that anything was wrong. She closes the logbook and sets it aside. Then she reaches for the black box. Her hands are steady as she connects it to her laptop using an adapter she borrowed from a friend who works accident reconstruction. The interface loads slowly, a progress bar creeping across the screen. When it finishes, 2 files appear: flight data and cockpit voice recording. She opens the voice file. Static fills her headphones first, a low hiss like the sound between radio stations. Then wind noise. Then alarms. Sharp, insistent, layered over each other. And beneath it all, her father's voice. Calm, steady, professional. "Tower, this is flight 447. We're encountering severe turbulence. Requesting altitude change." She closes her eyes and listens. Somewhere in this ruin is the truth. She listens to the recording 17 times before the sun comes up. The hangar has no windows, just high industrial skylights that let in gray dawn light. And by the time she finally stops the playback and removes her headphones, her neck aches and her eyes burn. She's been sitting on the concrete floor for 6 hours, her laptop balanced on a toolbox, the black box still cradled in her lap like something fragile. Her father's voice, calm and clear. "Tower, this is flight 447. We're encountering severe turbulence. Requesting altitude change." A pause. Static. Then the co-pilot, younger, his voice tight with fear. "We're losing hydraulics. The stick's not responding." Her father again, steady. "I have the controls. Switching to manual." Alarms. Wind noise. The sound of something mechanical failing. A high-pitched whine beneath the chaos. Then his voice, quieter now, almost to himself. "The trim's reversed. Someone reversed the control trim." She rewinds, listens again. "The trim's reversed. Not disorientation, not poor judgment, not a mistake. Something was wrong with the plane." She stands slowly, her legs stiff from sitting too long, and walks to the nearest section of wreckage. The tail assembly, twisted and scarred, the vertical stabilizer bent at an unnatural angle. She crouches beside it, running her fingers along the control surfaces, feeling for anything that might explain what he was saying. Control trim, the system that adjusts the angle of the horizontal stabilizer, the part of the tail that keeps the plane level in flight. If it reversed, if it moved the wrong direction when he tried to correct, the plane would have pitched nose down instead of leveling out. She pulls out her phone and photographs the stabilizer from 3 angles, then opens the investigation report on her laptop. Page 89, Appendix C, control trim inspected post-recovery. No mechanical anomalies detected. She reads it twice, then she goes back to the wreckage. The restoration work begins the way all restorations begin, with documentation. She spends the next 4 days cataloging every piece of the wreckage, photographing each section from multiple angles, measuring dimensions, labeling parts with numbered tags, every bolt, every panel, every shard of metal that used to be part of something whole. She works alone. No crew, no witnesses. Just her and the bones of a machine that fell from the sky. The airline sends a supervisor once, a man in his 50s with a clipboard and a company jacket, who walks through the hangar for 20 minutes and signs off on her progress without asking questions. He doesn't look at her face, doesn't ask her name, just checks boxes on his form and leaves. She prefers it that way. By the 4th day, she reaches the cockpit section. The control panel is a shattered web of wires and broken glass. Instruments torn from their mounts, the throttle levers bent backward. But the pilot's seat is still intact, the leather cracked and stained dark with something she doesn't let herself think about. She kneels beside the seat and starts removing debris. Pieces of paneling, insulation, fragments of the overhead compartment. Her hands move carefully, methodically, the way her father taught her to work on the Cessna. Never rush, never assume. Every part matters. That's when she sees it. Wedged under the seat frame, half buried in dirt and debris, his logbook. She pulls it free slowly, her breath catching. The cover is water damaged, swollen and warped, but the binding is still intact. She opens it carefully, peeling the pages apart. His handwriting is faint in places, the ink smeared, but still legible. She flips to the last entry. November 14th. Pre-flight complete. All systems green. Weather advisory noted. Moderate turbulence expected over Cascades. Ceiling at 8,000 FT. Helen's birthday next week. Picked up her gift yesterday. Helen. Her mother. He was coming home to her. Nora closes the logbook and presses it against her chest, her eyes burning. For a moment, she just sits there on the cold hangar floor, surrounded by wreckage, holding the last thing he wrote before he died. Then she stands. She walks to the tail section again, this time with purpose. She photographs the stabilizer assembly from every angle, then kneels and examines the actuator, the small mechanical unit that controls the trim position. It's corroded, seized, the metal pitted with rust. She tries to move it manually. It doesn't budge. She pulls her phone out and searches the part number stamped on the housing. The actuator was replaced 3 days before the crash. She scrolls through the maintenance logs she downloaded from the airline's public records. It's just so legally required documentation, available to anyone who knows where to look. The entry is there, dated November 11th. Stabilizer trim actuator replaced. Part number A742-3B, installed by R. Gallagher. Inspection complete. Airworthy, R. Gallagher. She writes the name down in her notebook. Then she goes back to the recording and listens again, this time with the maintenance log open beside her. She listens to her father's voice. Calm, professional, doing everything right. And she listens to the sound of the plane failing around him. The trim's reversed. She pulls up the investigation report again and reads the section on the control trim inspection. It's 2 paragraphs. 2 paragraphs explaining why the system was tested on the ground and found to be functioning normally, but they never tested it under flight conditions. They never simulated the failure. They never asked why a pilot with 23 years of experience would say the trim was reversed unless it actually was. Nora closes her laptop and looks at the wreckage spread across the hangar floor. Her father wasn't disoriented. He wasn't making poor decisions. He was telling them exactly what was happening, and no one listened. She stands and walks to the evidence cabinet, now open, the black box sitting on the shelf where she left it. She picks it up and holds it in her hands, feeling its weight. This is the last thing that hurt him, the last record of what he knew. And somewhere in this ruin, buried in the parts the investigators cataloged and dismissed, is the proof. She sets the black box down and reaches for her phone. She needs to find R. Gallagher. Finding Gallagher takes 2 weeks. Nora starts with the airline's HR department, but they tell her employee records are confidential. She tries the FAA maintenance database, but Gallagher's certification lapsed 6 months after the crash and was never renewed. She searches social media, public records, property tax filings. Nothing. Finally, she calls a friend who works at another airline, someone who knows the network of mechanics and engineers who move between companies, chasing contracts and overtime. He makes a few calls. 3 days later, he texts her an address. Last known, storage facility, Henderson NV, Unit 247. No phone, no forwarding. Good luck. She drives to Nevada on a Saturday morning, 6 hours south through flat desert highway, the mountains behind her fading into heat shimmer. The storage facility is on the edge of Henderson, a sprawling grid of corrugated metal units, behind chain-link fencing. She parks near the office, but it's closed. A handwritten sign taped to the window says, "Self-service. Code at gate." She walks the rows until she finds Unit 247. The door is padlocked, rusted, the metal warped from years of sun. She knocks. No answer. She waits. Nothing. She's about to leave when she notices the padlock isn't fully closed. The shackle is threaded through the latch, but not locked. She hesitates, then pulls it free. The door rolls up with a metallic screech. Inside boxes, tools, a workbench covered in dust. And on the back wall, pinned with thumbtacks, a dozen photographs of aircraft, some in flight, some on the tarmac, some mid-maintenance with panels removed and engines exposed. She steps inside slowly, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. On the workbench, half buried under old invoices and shop rags, is a maintenance manual for a 800. The same model as Flight 447. She opens it carefully. The pages are dog-eared, annotated in pencil. Sections underlined, notes in the margins. Then she sees it. A photograph tucked between the pages. Black and white, a close-up of a stabilizer trim actuator, the same part she found corroded in the wreckage. Someone has circled it in red pen and written in the margin, installed backwards. Pitch reversal under load. Her breath catches. She pulls out her phone and photographs the page, the annotation, the circled actuator. Then she looks around the storage unit again, searching for anything else. A phone number, an address, a clue to where Gallagher went. But there's nothing. Just the tools of someone who stopped working, the photographs of someone who used to care. She leaves the unit open and walks back to her car. On the drive home, she calls the airline's legal department. She tells them what she found. She sends them the photograph. She explains that the actuator was installed incorrectly, that it would have caused the trim to reverse under stress, that her father's final words on the recording weren't disorientation. They were a diagnosis. They respond 2 days later with a cease and desist letter. She is not authorized to access sealed evidence. She is in violation of her restoration contract by removing materials from the investigation archive. Her employment is terminated, effective immediately, and any further contact will result in legal action. She reads the letter twice, then sets it on her kitchen table and stares at it. They don't want the truth. They want the story to stay closed. She goes to the FAA next. She brings the actuator, the recording, the photograph from Gallagher's storage unit. She sits across from an investigator in a gray office with fluorescent lights and explains everything she found. He listens. He takes notes. Then he says, "The case is closed. Reopening an investigation requires new evidence, not reinterpretation of existing evidence." "This is new evidence," she says. "It's a maintenance annotation. It's not proof of installation error. And even if it was, the actuator was tested post-recovery and found functional. They tested it on the ground, not under flight conditions. That's standard procedure." She leans forward. "My father said the trim was reversed. It's on the recording. You can hear him." The investigator closes his folder. "Your father also said he had the controls. He said he was switching to manual. The data shows he didn't stabilize the descent. That's pilot error." She stares at him. "I'm sorry," he says, standing, "but there's nothing here that changes the conclusion." She walks out of the building and sits in her car for 20 minutes, her hands gripping the steering wheel, her breathing shallow and uneven. Then she drives to her mother's house. Helen lives in a suburb north of Portland now, in a house she bought with the life insurance money. She remarried 2 years ago, a man named Richard who works in real estate and drives a Lexus. Nora hasn't been here since the wedding. She rings the doorbell. Helen opens the door and blinks in surprise. "Nora!" "I need to talk to you." Her mother glances back into the house, then steps outside and closes the door behind her. "This isn't a good time. I found something about the crash." Helen's expression tightens. "Don't." He didn't make a mistake. The plane failed. The trim, actuator was installed wrong, and it reversed under stress. That's why he couldn't control the descent. That's why... "Stop." Nora stops. Her mother looks at her for a long moment, her face tired, her eyes flat. "Why are you doing this?" "Because he didn't make a mistake." "It doesn't matter anymore." "It matters to me." Helen shakes her head slowly. "You can't bring him back, Nora. No matter how many files you read or how many parts you dig up. He's gone. And the rest of us. She pauses, her voice catching. The rest of us had to move on. You believed them, Nora says quietly. I believed the people whose job it is to know. They were wrong. Her mother looks away. Maybe. But I can't live in that maybe anymore. I can't spend the rest of my life wondering if someone lied or if something was missed or if he should still be here. I just can't. She opens the door and steps inside. Mom! Helen turns back, her hand on the doorframe. Let it go, Nora. Please. Then she closes the door. Nora stands on the porch for a long time, the November wind cold against her face, the sound of her own heartbeat loud in her ears. Then she walks back to her car, gets in and drives. She doesn't go home. She goes to the hangar. The wreckage is gone, removed by court order 2 days ago, hauled back to the airline's salvage yard. The floor is empty now, just oil stains and scattered bolts, the faint outline of where the fuselage used to sit. But she still has the black box. She still has the recording. She still has the actuator. And she still has his voice, clear and certain, telling her what no one else wanted to hear. She sits on the floor in the center of the empty hangar and opens her laptop. Then she searches for journalists who covered the crash. The journalist's name is Andrea Wolf. Nora finds her through an archive search. Articles from 3 years ago when the crash was still front-page news. Wolf covered it extensively. The investigation, the families, the unanswered questions that slowly faded as the official report closed the case. Her writing was careful, thorough, skeptical in the right places. She didn't accept the easy narrative. Nora sends her an email at 2 a.m. My father was the pilot of Flight 447. I have evidence the investigation missed. I need someone to listen. Wolf responds 6 hours later. Coffee tomorrow? I'm in Portland. They meet at a diner on the east side, a place with vinyl booths and weak coffee and a jukebox that hasn't worked in years. Wolf is in her 40s. Gray streaks in her dark hair, a leather bag slung over one shoulder. She orders black coffee and doesn't waste time. What do you have? Nora slides the folder across the table. Inside, printed screenshots of the maintenance logs, the photograph from Gallagher's storage unit, technical diagrams of the stabilizer trim system, and a transcription of the cockpit voice recording with timestamps. Wolf reads through it, slowly, her expression neutral. When she reaches the transcription, she pauses. The trim's reversed, she reads aloud. He said that? Yes. And the investigation concluded pilot error. Yes. Wolf sets the folder down and looks at Nora for a long moment. Why didn't they test the actuator under flight conditions? Standard procedure is ground testing only. They said it functioned normally. But he said it reversed. They didn't listen. Wolf leans back in the booth, her fingers drumming on the table. Do you still have the actuator? Yes, and the black box. The FAA will say you tampered with evidence. I didn't tamper with anything. I documented it. Wolf nods slowly. Okay, let me hear the recording. They go to Nora's apartment, a one-bedroom in Beaverton that still has moving boxes stacked in the corner because she's only been there 3 months. She set up a small workspace in the living room, a folding table, her laptop, the actuator wrapped in a towel beside a stack of printed reports. She connects the black box to her laptop and plays the recording. Static, wind, alarms. Then her father's voice, calm and steady. Tower! This is Flight 447. We're encountering severe turbulence. Requesting altitude change. The co-pilot, younger, panicked. We're losing hydraulics. The stick's not responding. Her father, I have the controls. Switching to manual. More alarms. The sound of something mechanical failing. A grinding whine beneath the chaos. Then his voice again, quieter. The trim's reversed. Someone reversed the control trim. Silence. Wolf sits very still, her eyes closed, listening. When the recording ends, she opens her eyes and looks at Nora. How many times have you listened to this? I don't know. A lot. Wolf nods. I'll run the story, but you need to be ready for what happens next. Nora looks at her. What do you mean? The airline will come after you. Legally, publicly. They'll say you're grief-stricken, unreliable, that you tampered with evidence. They'll try to discredit you before anyone takes this seriously. Let them. Wolf studies her. You've already lost your job, haven't you? Nora doesn't answer. And your family? Do they support this? Nora looks away. Wolf exhales slowly. Okay, I'll need a few weeks to verify the maintenance records, talk to independent engineers, and get the actuator examined by someone outside the FAA's chain. Can you hold on that long? Yes. Wolf stands and picks up her bag. At the door, she turns back. Why are you doing this? Nora hesitates. Because he told me to trust what I know, not what they tell me. Wolf nods. Then keep trusting that. After she leaves, Nora sits on the couch in the dim apartment and stares at the black box sitting on the table. The recording plays in her head, even when it's not turned on. His voice, calm and certain, doing everything right while the plane fell around him. She wonders what he was thinking in those final seconds. If he knew it wasn't his fault, if he hoped someone would figure it out. She wonders if he thought about her. Her phone buzzes. A text from her brother. Mom told me what you're doing. Stop. Please. She doesn't reply. The apartment is cold. She hasn't turned the heat on because she's trying to save money. Her severance from the airline ran out 2 weeks ago, and she's been living off savings and freelance work that barely covers rent. She wraps herself in a blanket and opens her laptop. She pulls up the investigation report again and reads through it one more time, looking for anything she missed. Page after page of technical analysis, flight data, witness statements. And on page 89, buried in the appendix, control trim inspected post-recovery. No mechanical anomalies detected. She closes the laptop and looks at the actuator sitting on the table, corroded and seized, the part that killed 37 people because someone installed it wrong and no one caught it. If you've ever searched for the truth in a place where no one wanted you to look, you know this feeling. The weight of it, the loneliness of it, the way it isolates you from everyone who's moved on, everyone who's decided the past is better left closed. Let me know if you've been there too. She picks up the actuator and turns it over in her hands, feeling the rough metal, the way it doesn't move no matter how hard she tries to rotate it. It's such a small thing, such an ordinary piece of machinery, and it changed everything. She sets it down and picks up her father's logbook instead. She opens it to the last entry and reads his handwriting again. Helen's birthday next week. Picked up her gift yesterday. He was thinking about the future, about coming home, about the people he loved. Not someone making reckless decisions. Not someone disoriented or careless. Someone trying to save everyone on that plane. She closes the logbook and presses it against her chest, her eyes burning. Outside, the rain starts again, a soft patter against the window. She sits in the dark apartment and listens to it, feeling the weight of 3 years pressing down on her shoulders. But she doesn't cry. She just sits there, holding his logbook, waiting for the journalist to finish her work, waiting for the world to hear what he said. The article publishes on a Tuesday morning. Wolf calls at 7 a.m. to tell her it's live. Nora opens her laptop and reads it in the gray light of her apartment, the headline stark across the screen. Daughter of Flight 447, pilot claims maintenance failure caused crash. New evidence. Contradicts official report. The article is thorough. It includes excerpts from the cockpit recording, photographs of the corroded actuator, quotes from an independent aerospace engineer who examined the part and confirmed it was installed incorrectly. It lays out the timeline. The actuator replaced 3 days before the crash. Gallagher's annotation in the maintenance manual. The FAA's refusal to reopen the investigation. And it includes her father's final words. The trim's reversed. By noon, the article has been shared 18,000 times. By evening, the airline issues a statement. Cascade Air stands by the findings of the National Transportation Safety Board's investigation into Flight 447. The allegations made in today's article are based on incomplete evidence and misinterpretation of technical data. We sympathize with the families affected by this tragedy, but we cannot allow misinformation to undermine the integrity of our safety protocols. They don't mention her by name. They don't have to. The next morning, her phone starts ringing. Unknown numbers, reporters, people asking for comment, for interviews, for more evidence. She ignores most of them. But 3 calls she answers. The first is from a woman named Patricia Lim, whose husband was a passenger on Flight 447. She's calling from San Diego, her voice quiet and careful. I never believed it was the pilot's fault, she says. My husband was a mechanical engineer. He would have known if something was wrong with the plane. I wanted to say thank you for not letting them bury this. The second call is from a man named Robert Chan, whose daughter was on the flight. He's angrier. They told us it was over, he says. They told us the investigation was closed and we had to move on. But we all knew, something didn't add up. The third call is from a lawyer named Marianne Torres. She's representing 4 families from Flight 447 in a wrongful death lawsuit against the airline. We'd like to include your findings in our case, she says, if you're willing to testify. Nora sits in her apartment and listens to their voices, one after another. People she's never met who've been carrying the same weight she has, the same doubt, the same refusal to accept the easy story. Yes, she tells the lawyer, I'll testify. 2 days later, the airline's legal team sends her a letter threatening a defamation suit. They claim she unlawfully accessed sealed evidence, violated her restoration contract, and made false allegations that damaged the company's reputation. They demand a retraction and public apology. She forwards the letter to Wolf, who forwards it to her editor, who forwards it to the paper's legal department. The paper issues a statement. We stand by our reporting. Then the NTSB announces a review of the Flight 447 investigation. It happens quietly, buried in a press release on a Friday afternoon. In light of new technical analysis, the NTSB will conduct a supplemental review of maintenance records and control system functionality related to Flight 447. Wolf calls her. You did it. Nora doesn't feel like she did anything. She just sits in her apartment, staring at the press release on her laptop screen, her hands trembling. The review takes 6 months. During that time, Nora finds freelance work with a small aircraft parts company in Hillsborough. She keeps her head down. She doesn't talk to reporters. She doesn't post on social media. She just works and waits. Her brother texts her once, I'm sorry I didn't believe you. She doesn't respond. Her mother doesn't contact her at all. In April, the NTSB releases its supplemental report. Nora reads it alone in her apartment, the rain steady against the window. The findings are clear. The stabilizer trim actuator recovered from the wreckage showed signs of improper installation and metal fatigue consistent with failure under operational stress. Testing conducted under simulated flight conditions demonstrated that the actuator would reverse control inputs when subjected to turbulence and hydraulic pressure fluctuations. The failure would have resulted in loss of pitch control and unrecoverable descent. The report concludes, the cause of Flight 447's crash was mechanical failure due to improper maintenance procedures. The pilot's actions during the emergency were consistent with attempting to compensate for control surface malfunction. The original determination of pilot error is hereby amended. Nora closes her laptop and sits very still. Her father's name is cleared. Not because she fought for it. Not because she demanded it, but because she listened to what he said and refused to let it disappear into the noise of institutional certainty. She picks up her phone and texts Wolf. "Thank you." Wolf responds immediately. "You did the hard part." Nora sets the phone down and looks at the black box sitting on her desk. She hasn't listened to the recording in months. She doesn't need to anymore. She knows what it says. She knows what he was trying to tell them. She knows he did everything right. Outside, the rain continues, soft and steady. She opens the window and lets the cold air in, breathing deeply, feeling the weight she's been carrying for 3 years finally begin to lift. Not gone, not erased, just lighter. She picks up his logbook and opens it to the last entry. Helen's birthday next week. Picked up her gift yesterday. He was thinking about coming home, about the people he loved, about the future. She closes the logbook and presses it against her chest, her eyes closed. "I heard you," she whispers. The apartment is silent except for the rain. She sits there for a long time, holding the logbook, feeling the grief and the relief tangled together in her chest like something she can finally carry without breaking. Then she stands and walks to the window. The sky is gray, heavy with clouds, but somewhere beyond them is the space where he used to fly. The space where he taught her to trust instruments and instinct, to listen for what was wrong, even when everyone else said everything was fine. She thinks about the plane he used to keep at the airstrip, the Cessna 172 with blue paint and the propeller blade he trued by feel. She wonders if it's still there, gathering dust, waiting. She wonders if she could fly it. Not today, not yet, but someday. Someday soon. 3 weeks after the amended report is released, Nora drives to the airstrip where her father kept his Cessna. She hasn't been here in 4 years. The last time was 2 months before the crash, when he asked her to help him replace the battery. She remembers the smell of oil and cut grass, the way the afternoon sun made the aluminum fuselage glow white-hot, the sound of his voice explaining the proper torque for the battery terminals. The airstrip is exactly as she remembers it. A single runway, a row of hangars, a small office building with peeling paint. She parks near the fence and walks to Hangar 7, the one he rented for as long as she can remember. The door is unlocked. Inside, the Cessna sits under a tarp, dusty and still. She pulls the tarp back slowly, revealing the blue paint, now faded and streaked with grime. The propeller is still. The tires are flat. The windshield is covered in a layer of pollen and dirt. She walks around the plane slowly, running her fingers along the wing, feeling the rivets and seams, the texture of aluminum that's been baking in the sun for years. It feels smaller than she remembers, more fragile. She opens the pilot's door and climbs into the cockpit. The seat is cracked, the leather stiff and dry. The control panel is dusty, the instruments dark. She wraps her hands around the control yoke and closes her eyes. For a moment, she's 11 again, sitting in the co-pilot's seat, her father beside her, his voice calm and steady as he explains how to read the altimeter, how to trust the instruments, how to feel the pull of ascent in her stomach. She opens her eyes and looks at the empty seat beside her. He's not there. He's never going to be there again. but his voice is still clear in her memory. Trust what you know. She sits there for a long time, her hands on the yoke, the cockpit silent around her. Then she climbs out and closes the door. On the drive home, she stops at her brother's house. Owen lives in Hillsborough, in a small bungalow with a workshop in the garage where he builds model rockets with his daughter. Nora hasn't seen him since before the article was published. She rings the doorbell. He opens it, surprise flickering across his face. Nora! Can we talk? He nods and steps outside, closing the door behind him. They sit on the front steps, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. I'm sorry, he says after a moment, for not believing you. She looks at her hands. You believed what everyone else believed. I should have listened to you. She doesn't respond. She's not sure what to say. The apology is real, but it doesn't erase the months she spent alone, carrying the weight of doubt and isolation. How's Mom? She asks finally. Owen shakes his head. I don't know. She won't talk about it. She read the report, but she hasn't said anything. Richard thinks she's just trying to move on. Is that what you think? He's quiet for a long moment. I think she's scared of what it means, of having to go back to that grief when she thought she was done with it. Nora nods slowly. She understands that. She understands the impulse to close the door and walk away, to choose peace over truth. But she couldn't do it. Are you okay? Owen asks. She thinks about the question. Is she okay? She's exhausted. Her savings are gone. She doesn't have a job lined up. Her relationship with her mother is fractured, maybe beyond repair. She spent 3 years chasing a truth that cost her almost everything. But her father's name is cleared. The truth is on the record. The families have closure. Yeah, she says quietly. I think I am. Owen nods. He'd be proud of you. She doesn't respond. She just sits there on the steps, the sun warm on her face, the sound of a lawnmower humming somewhere in the distance. That night, she goes back to her apartment and opens the box where she's been keeping the evidence. The black box, the actuator, the logbook, the photograph from Gallagher's storage unit. She looks at them for a long time, these objects that defined her life for 3 years. Then she calls the Smithsonian's Air and Space Museum. They're interested. They want to include the black box and actuator in an exhibit on aviation safety and accident investigation. They want to tell the story of Flight 447, of the families who fought for the truth, of the importance of listening to pilots, even when systems say everything is fine. She agrees to donate them. Not yet, but soon. She keeps the logbook. Some things aren't meant to be displayed. Some things are meant to be held close, private, sacred. She opens it to the last entry and reads his handwriting one more time. Helen's birthday next week. Picked up her gift yesterday. He was thinking about the future, about coming home, about love. She closes the logbook and sets it on her desk. Then she opens her laptop and searches for flight schools in the Portland area. She's not ready to fly yet, but she wants to learn. She wants to understand what he knew, what he felt, what it means to trust the instruments and the air beneath you. She wants to carry him forward, not through grief or vindication, but through the thing he loved most. Sometimes, what's left unsaid says everything, but sometimes, what's finally heard changes everything that comes after. She closes the laptop and looks out the window. The sky is clear tonight, scattered with stars. She wonders if he's up there somewhere, in the space between clouds and stars, watching her figure out how to live with his truth finally acknowledged. She wonders if he knows she heard him. She thinks he does. It takes 8 months to restore the Cessna. Nora does all the work herself. The battery, the tires, the engine overhaul, the control surfaces. She spends Weekends at the airstrip, working slowly and carefully, her hands learning the texture of aluminum and oil, the rhythm of maintenance her father knew by heart. She doesn't rush. She's not building toward a deadline. She's building toward understanding. When the plane is finally airworthy again, she paints a small inscription on the tail, just below the registration number. JT, for those who knew the truth before the world did. On a Saturday morning in June, she arrives at the airstrip before dawn. The sky is pale blue, cloudless. The air cool and still. She runs through the pre-flight checklist, her father's logbook open on the seat beside her. The engine catches on the second try. The propeller spins, cutting the air with a low, steady hum. She feels the vibration through the control yoke, the way he taught her to feel it when she was 11 years old. She sits there for a long time, her hands on the controls, the engine idling, the morning light warming the windshield. Then she hears footsteps behind the plane. She turns and sees her mother standing at the edge of the taxiway, her hands in her coat pockets, her face unreadable. Nora shuts the engine down. Helen walks slowly toward the plane and stops a few feet from the wing. She looks at the inscription on the tail, then at Nora. "Your brother told me you were here," she says quietly. Nora doesn't respond. She just waits. Her mother looks at the plane for a long moment, her eyes moving over the wings, the propeller, the fresh paint. "He would have been proud," she says finally. Nora nods. "I know." Helen's voice cracks slightly. "I couldn't do what you did. I couldn't keep fighting." "I know that too." Her mother closes her eyes briefly, then opens them. "I'm sorry for not believing you, for closing the door." Nora looks at her hands still resting on the control yoke. "You did what you needed to survive." "And you did what you needed to survive." Helen's voice is soft, fragile. "I don't know if I can go back to that grief again. I don't know if I'm strong enough." "You don't have to," Nora says. "It's over now." Her mother nods slowly. She steps closer and touches the wing gently, her fingers tracing the rivets. "Can I sit with you, just for a minute?" Nora hesitates, then nods. Helen climbs into the co-pilot's seat, moving carefully, like someone entering a place they haven't been in a long time. She looks at the instrument panel, the control yoke, the logbook still open on the seat between them. "I forgot how small it was," she says quietly. Nora starts the engine again. The propeller spins, the cockpit filling with the sound of mechanical life. Her mother closes her eyes and leans back in the seat, her hands folded in her lap. They sit there together in the idling plane, not speaking, just listening to the engine hum. After a few minutes, Helen opens her eyes and looks at Nora. "Are you going to fly it?" "Yes." "Today?" "Not yet, but soon." Her mother nods. She reaches over and touches Nora's hand briefly, then climbs out of the plane. "Be careful," she says, standing in the grass beside the wing. "I will." Helen turns and walks back toward the parking area, her figure growing smaller against the morning light. Nora watches her go. Then she looks at the logbook on the seat beside her. She picks it up and opens it to the last entry. Helen's birthday next week. Picked up her gift yesterday. He was thinking about coming home, about the people he loved, about the life he was building. She closes the logbook and sets it on the dashboard where she can see it. Then she runs through the checklist again, methodically, the way he taught her. Fuel, flaps, trim, mixture, throttle, everything green. She doesn't take off. Not today. She just sits there, her hands on the controls, feeling the vibration of the engine, the way the plane wants to move, the way it's ready. Some flights aren't about reaching a destination. Some flights are about remembering how to trust the air beneath you. She learned something in those 3 years of searching through wreckage and silence. She learned that the truth doesn't always arrive on time. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it takes someone willing to dig through the ruins and ask the questions no one else wanted to ask. Sometimes it takes refusing to let go of what you know, even when the world tells you you're wrong. But when the truth finally comes, it changes everything. Not because it brings him back, not because it erases the loss or repairs what broke, but because it lets you carry him forward. Not as the man the world blamed, but as the person who taught you to trust what you know. As the voice that says, even now, even after everything, keep flying. She shuts the engine down and climbs out of the plane. The sun is higher now, warming the airstrip, the sound of birds returning after the noise of the engine fades. She walks around the Cessna one more time, running her hand along the wing, checking the control surfaces, making sure everything is secure. Then she locks the hangar door and drives home. But she'll be back, tomorrow or the day after or the week after that. And when she's ready, she'll fly, not because she has to, not because she's proving anything, but because he taught her how, and because some lessons are meant to be lived, not just remembered. She touches the control stick one last time before she leaves. And for the first time in years, she feels ready. She learned that the truth doesn't always arrive on time. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it takes wreckage. Sometimes it takes someone willing to dig through the ruins and ask the questions no one else wanted to ask. But when it finally comes, it changes everything. Not because it brings him back, not because it erases the loss or repairs what broke, but because it lets you carry him forward. Not as the man the world blamed, but as the voice that says, even now, even after everything, keep flying. Some flights aren't about reaching a destination. Some flights are about remembering how to trust the air beneath you. And some lessons are meant to be lived, not just remembered.